So, this group of books in my book collection were all published while Elvis Presley was alive. This is the first biography, The Elvis Presley Story, by James Gregory, and was published in 1960. The introduction was written by radio and later TV host of American Bandstand, Dick Clark. Dick Clark interviewed Elvis 3 times from 1958 to 1960 while he was in the Army. The second book published was one I previously mentioned by May Mann, the godmother of country music and co-writer of Heartbreak Hotel. It was published in 1973. The next book was written by May Mann, the only authorized reporter by Colonel Parker and Hal Wallace. Both of them agreed and allowed May to interview Elvis Presley, and she had interviewed practically everyone who knew Elvis, including girlfriends, the Beatles, Elvis's ex-wife Priscilla, and even Tom Parker. This book was re-released in 1977, and it was called The Private Elvis. So if you have that book, much of the information in that book is similar to Elvis and the Colonel, but I'm going to take my information from the first book of Elvis and the Colonel. The last book that I will mention that was written while Elvis was alive was one that many people are familiar with, and that was Elvis What Happened. That book was written by Sonny West, Red West, Dave Hebler, as told to Steve Dunleavy. The reason why the publishing dates are important is because these books were written while Elvis was alive, and the Colonel and Priscilla and many other people that were interviewed, so that if there was any salacious information or errors in the book, I think we would have been made aware of those errors, or at least a liable lawsuit for wrong information. Some people might be aware of the defamation lawsuit that Anita Wood and Johnny Brewer had against a newspaper for publishing a false story about Anita and Elvis in Las Vegas, and they won that lawsuit. So the fact that these books were written while Elvis was alive, anything of that nature could have been addressed then. May Mann's book is so reputable that Peter Guralnick cites her work 3 times in his book Last Train to Memphis, 11 times in Careless Love. Susan Finstadt also cites May's writing in her book The Child Bride. May was also a syndicated columnist and appeared weekly in 800 newspapers. There are many pictures of May Mann and Elvis on his movie sets, and later on, she also became very friendly with Priscilla and was able to interview her also. It has been established that May Mann is a respected and truthful source when it comes to information regarding Elvis Presley. So lately there have been some YouTube videos out there regarding the divorce of Elvis and Priscilla. And what's interesting in May's book is she was able to interview both Elvis and Priscilla. Let's get into some of the details that May Mann outlines in her book regarding the divorce settlement. This may clarify some of the information that's been out there for many years, something that Sonny West had once mentioned, and where that information came from. The information I'm revealing is information revealed in this book based on May Mann's research, and it's for entertainment purposes. I do not have the full document, but I can see where some of the beliefs that have been going around for years, where they originated from. Some people may not be aware that after the initial separation agreement, Priscilla went back to court to get more money from Elvis for the divorce settlement. On page 247, we see that Priscilla, the past 2 years, began stepping out of line. Maybe she got the idea of women's lib or something. She plain began disregarding what Elvis was asking her to do. She rebelled, of all times, on his birthday. Priscilla made it clear she led her own life if Elvis wouldn't concede to her ways. At Elvis's last opening night in Las Vegas, Priscilla flew up. She got so miffed she stayed backstage. She wouldn't go out and take her rightful place in her usual booth. The big trouble was Priscilla was plain lonely for attention, mainly her man's. She had been hidden away too long. Her movie offers, Elvis believed, are mostly to exploit the Elvis Presley name. Priscilla angrily refused to be sold short. In her own right, she had worked hard, studying dancing, singing, and acting, so she could become a full-fledged star. Her original idea was for her and Elvis to make a picture together. The fans would love seeing his real-life leading lady play a movie. The Colonel thought otherwise. Priscilla said Elvis could insist on his rights. Quote, I am tired of staying home as a doormat, always waiting for Elvis. If Elvis really loved me and Lisa Marie, I would be more important than any concert tours, she declared. We don't need the money. We do need each other. I'm not asking for any more than any other wife of a husband. End quote. Now, in order to keep details about the divorce under wraps, they signed a property settlement agreement. However, Priscilla said she felt she had, quote, been led around by the nose and legally hoodwinked. Elvis's counter petition was filed, which declared in part, to my knowledge, the reason she permitted the default to be entered was her announced intention to me as early as Christmas of 1971 that she wanted her freedom. She left our home at that time, at Christmas 1971. I had already heard about her relationship with one Mike Stone, and I asked her about Mike Stone later in February of 72. She expressed surprise that I had known about her relationship with Mike Stone and her desire to have a separation and her freedom in mid-July of 1972. The book goes on to say that Elvis asked Priscilla what she wanted, what she needed, and she said nothing. She simply wanted her freedom. Elvis declared Priscilla knew of his assets, earnings, and properties, that she signed joint income taxes with him, and they jointly purchased their California home by her wishes. Presiding Judge L.J. Rittenbrand indicated he could find no fraud, and that she said she wanted her freedom for another man and willingly agreed to the property settlement. Priscilla was also advised that in order to assure the privacy and safety of our daughter, she would assume the use of her maiden name, Beaulieu, and that if I, Elvis, filed for dissolution of our marriage, her new name and address would not be disclosed in public, and she agreed. Since then, it is clear that neither Mrs. Presley nor I anticipate or desire a reconciliation. Both of us concede that irreconcilable differences have resulted in an irremediable breakdown of our marriage. Elvis's petition denied that Priscilla did not know the nature or value of the assets owned by me, nor that she was entitled to half of them. After the dissolution agreement had been signed on August 15th, 1972, Priscilla went to stay with karate instructor Mike Stone in Hawaii. Near the end of that year, Elvis received a phone call. Quote, she called me to advise me that she had a quarrel with Mike. She then told me that she might want to come back to me. I told her, and I cautioned her, that she should not take that for granted. End quote. To learn more about this topic and others, check out Elvis and the Colonel by May Mann, the only authorized biography by Elvis and the Colonel. Arlene Cogan's book, Elvis, This One's for You. She had quoted Elvis as saying in 1957 that Christmas was his favorite holiday. I love Christmas. He also told her that when making movies, he would always be home for Christmas and his birthday. It is also well known about the special bond between Elvis and his mother Gladys, and how her absence had affected Elvis so deeply. It is just my observation that the timing of Priscilla's actions all coincide with the few most important days in Elvis's life. Coincidence or purposeful acts of vengeance?